It's one of the most pivotal, most talked about moments in all of human history. And yet, when you actually look at the primary sources, the Gospels, you find this central puzzle. They don't all agree on the final words of Jesus, or Yeshua, which was his name in Aramaic. So why the difference? What's going on here? Okay, let's dive right into this textual investigation.
So to get to the bottom of this, we're going to follow the evidence step by step. First, we'll nail down exactly what the contradiction is. Then, we're going to compare the 4 gospel accounts, kind of like their 4 different witness statements. After that, we'll get into the crucial eyewitness argument, decode a really key Aramaic phrase, and finally, see if we can establish a clear hierarchy of reliability from all this.
You have to ask, how can there possibly be different versions of such a monumental event? Well, the source material we're looking at suggests the answer really comes down to the incredible challenges of translation, from the original Aramaic, then through Greek, and eventually into all of our modern languages.
All right, to really figure this out, we've got to go straight to the texts themselves. We're going to compare the accounts from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and for this we're using the Aramaic Bible in plain English as our source text, just to get as close as we can to the original language.
Okay, let's get right to the evidence. We're going to treat these 4 accounts like 4 distinct pieces of testimony in our investigation. We'll just lay them out side by side and you'll see exactly where they line up and where they really, really don't.
So look at this. The contrast here is just, wow, it jumps right out at you. You can see Matthew and Mark are almost identical, right? Both have that famous cry of abandonment, and Mark even gives us the Aramaic words. But then you get to Luke, and it's a totally different feeling. It's a statement of complete trust. My Father, into your hands I lay down my spirit. And John's account, it's different again, focusing on a physical need, I thirst, and then this declaration of completion, behold, it is finished.
Okay, so you've got 4 different testimonies. The obvious question is, right, should we give more weight to one of them over the others? The source material we're digging into here makes a really powerful argument for exactly that, and it's all based on who was actually there.
And this is the absolute core of the argument. According to the source, John is basically the star witness. If he was the only one of the 4 writers physically standing at the foot of the cross, well then his testimony might have a unique claim to accuracy. This idea is the central pillar for prioritizing his account over the others.
And this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? It shows you the huge thematic difference. John's account isn't a cry of desperation or even an act of surrender. It's about resolution. The words, I thirst and it is finished, are tied directly in his writing to the fulfillment of Scripture. Meanwhile, the other Gospels are recording this much more personal, direct appeal to God, whether it's a desperate question or an act of trust.
Okay, let's zoom in on that really powerful Aramaic cry, the one from Matthew and Mark. What's so interesting is that the text itself tells us that even the crowd standing right there was confused. They thought he was calling for the prophet Elijah. That alone hints at just how ambiguous this phrase might have been, even in the moment it was spoken.
Now this is where it gets really, really interesting. You have 2 scholarly translations of the exact same Aramaic phrase, El lemana shabakathni, and they mean 2 completely different things. Bosher's gives us that familiar, heart-wrenching cry of abandonment, but Lamsa's translation, well, it offers something else entirely, a cry of purpose.
So think about what this means. Lamsa's translation completely flips the script on this moment, and the footnote makes it crystal clear. The cry isn't about being forsaken, it's an acknowledgement of a mission. It's not a question, it's a declaration. This was my destiny. That changes just about everything we think about that moment.
All right, let's pull all these pieces together. The eyewitness account, the different themes, those competing translations. The author of our source material takes all of this and proposes a pretty clear hierarchy for how reliable these specific accounts might be. So here's the logic behind the ranking, and it's pretty straightforward. John gets the top spot because he was physically there. Mark is seen as recording what the crowd thought they heard, that confused interpretation. Matthew is then seen as secondary, probably taking his reference from Mark. And Luke's account is treated as more of a thematic variation, maybe to portray a more serene death that emphasized submission to the Father's will.
And so here it is, the final proposed order from this analysis. The eyewitness, John, is placed right at the top. After him comes Mark, who captured the public's perception of the event. Then you have Matthew, who likely followed Mark's lead. And finally, Luke, whose account seems to offer a distinct theological take, one of peaceful surrender, rather than a direct report of that specific and maybe misunderstood Aramaic phrase.
So as we wrap this up, it really leaves us with a bigger question, one that goes way beyond these ancient texts, right? When we're evaluating any historical account, how much does the identity of the witness, their proximity, their perspective, maybe even their agenda, how much does that change the fundamental weight of their words? It's definitely something to think about.